Well, the idea of what do you write when you write music for science fiction movies is really interesting. On the face of it, you would imagine it would be the most avant-garde, a lot of futuristic music for the future. And it turns out that that's not the case. It turns out music to describe the future is hugely romantic, hugely, passionate, sometimes a little scary because it's unusual. But it did allow us to, for example, record Ligeti's atmospheres. Now, again, that's also important. Now, here we are, some pops orchestra, right? We're doing Ligeti's atmospheres. Now, putting it in the context of 2001, where Stanley Kubrick used it, that makes a certain amount of sense, obviously. On the other hand, the recording used on the soundtrack was an old recording just to begin with. So now we were able to use the state of the art or technology to record that anew and with everybody in the orchestra playing exactly what Ligeti says. So everybody in that piece has a separate part. No one is playing the same notes as anybody else ever. So this was a great excuse again for me to deal with how composers have imagined, or in this case, in the case of Stanley Kubrick, a director, what outer space sounds like. And sometimes it's kind of fun and funny, and sometimes it's quirky, and sometimes it's terrifying. But again, because it's a journey, I wanted to find something that would be the as interstitial material between the larger pieces. And that's when I remembered that in Forbidden Planet, which is a movie from the 1950s, that's the first movie to use a purely and totally electronic score. And that score was written by B.B. Barron. She and her husband. Her husband had the tapes and the oscillators, and she was creating the actual underscoring of that extraordinary and, for my money, best science fiction movie ever made. And so we got permission for that. So you actually hear that in stereo between the different numbers. I think the creation of the female monster also was a great and important piece for me to do because Waxman's score to Bride of Frankenstein was one of the most influential scores ever because it was reused in a series called Flash Gordon. The Flash Gordon series, there were three of them, and they cut and spliced music by Waxman in that series. Because Waxman wrote this hugely romantic and dramatic music for Bride of Frankenstein, which now was accompanying Flash Gordon on Planet Mongo or Planet Mars with ray guns and that, there were a couple of other people watching those serials as kids. Those serials were shown on television in America in the 1950s, even though they were made in the 1930s. So who was watching those? Well, someone called Steven Spielberg and another one called George Lucas. And so when Star Wars was first, created, and John said to me, John Williams said to me, it's a cartoon. What do you want me to write? And I said, no, we want you to write big symphonic music in the style of Korngold and Waxman. And that is the key to the success of Star Wars, is its score. If you compare Star Wars, that first episode, that first film, with Flash Gordon, which Dino De Laurentiis made at that time, and Dino De Laurentiis made that remake of Flash Gordon using music by a rock group. So they thought it would be fun to make that movie about a kind of pop rock kind of camp, Flash Gordon with his tight shorts and Queen Azura and all of that stuff, and all done with a wink and a nod. Whereas in Star Wars, because they couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon, they invented another one, and they all take it seriously. They take it as seriously as the original Flash Gordon serial, but the music is fully symphonic and with a nod and an understanding of the traditions of dramatic scoring. So that's why Journey to the Stars becomes so important to me. And also, we were able to do the opening of Also Sprach Zarathustra, but also then the version of Alex North, which got thrown out. So you get to hear the two versions of it. And the very ending of that recording, we have from Aniara the Blomdahl opera that takes place in a spaceship. That's the music that I had used when my wife and I got married, and she came down the aisle with that music. So she floated down the aisle. So that was a little personal thing to end that album, because that was my journey to the stars. We've only been married 56 years, so I guess it worked.